Yes, Ren?
What did I tell you about cartoons?
They're not real? And, they'll ruin your mind? Oh yeah! They're really only puppets!
That's absolutely correct, stupid. So now that you've come to your senses about this cob foolery, what are you going to do next?
The story goes that sometime in December of 1991, with its first season still in delayed production, John Kricfalusi presented an outline for a Ren Stimpy cartoon to story editor Will McRobb and executive producer Vanessa Coffey. The cartoon would see Stimpy trying to make his own cartoon, tirelessly slaving away over storyboards and animation cells, while Ren acted as Stimpy's producer, doing none of the work, getting all the money and the credit, while demanding changes and stamping all over Stimpy's vision. It would be the most meta episode of Ren and Stimpy ever, and would paint the very people he was pitching it to as the bad guys. According to John Kay in a 1994 issue of Comic Interview, McRobb and Coffey didn't take it too well, reportedly saying, "Maybe you thought we had a sense of humor about ourselves. We don't." And then John Kay was fired. Not for that, no, he was fired because he was a difficult to work with narcissist who was frequently behind schedule. Between seasons 2 and 3, production of the Ren Stimpy show was moved from Kricfalusi's Spumco studio to Nickelodeon's new in-house studio, Games Animation, with most of the original team carrying over and Spumco's co-founder Bob Camp taking over as creative director of the show. And after all of that, with a great deal of conflict between animators and producers, with new creatives in charge and a new studio still finding its feet, that's when the higher-ups went, "Okay, now you can make your meta Stimpy Makes a Cartoon episode."
What?
Stimpy's cartoon show originally aired on Nickelodeon on January 8th, 1994, the 4th episode of Season 3, the 22nd episode overall. It was directed by Bob Camp, with John Kay credited as writer, though he later requested that credit be removed. The script had actually been written by an uncredited Eleanor Blake, a Ren Stimpy animator who you might also know as the singer-songwriter April March. Stimpy has got it into his head to make a cartoon. He's been inspired by his animation hero, cartoonist Wilbur Cobb. So now he's putting pencil to paper to create some art. Ren initially thinks this is stupid, but soon feels left out of the process and asks Stimpy if he can help.
I got it, Ren! You can play producer!
Producer? What's that?
A producer is the guy that tells the artist what to do, and later makes all the changes. And then, when the cartoon's done, he takes all the credit.
And so Ren takes over the role of producer, sitting back while Stimpy does all of the work, charging Stimpy for art supplies, and rejecting Stimpy's ideas. The cartoon is basically 3 extended segments. The first being a long montage of Stimpy grinding himself down to get things done. You can tell, even without John Kay's involvement, that this comes from a place of real pain for the animation crew. Once the cartoon is finished, Ren and Stimpy go to meet the elderly Wilbur Cobb, who represents the old guard of animation. Not a specific parody of anyone, he's not Walt Disney or Chuck Jones or anyone like that, just a sort of archetype. The joke here is that the guy is old, he rambles incoherently, and parts of his body are falling off.
The walls have teeth. Us Italians have to stick together, you know. Now, what is it you have for me?
And finally, our third segment, we actually get to see Stimpy's cartoon, titled I Like Pink, which is about what you'd expect from Stimpy. Just because the little guy's got passion doesn't mean he's got any skills.
Well, Explodey, I'm ready for that kiss now. I have to throw up now, Poopy.
Stimpy's cartoon show has all the hallmarks of a classic Ren and Stimpy cartoon. Gross out gags extended as long as the show can make them, pure stupid Stimpy and pure greedy Ren, and everything is just dripping in raw cynicism. Even though he wasn't in the studio for its production and requested his name be taken off, it still feels like a John K. era cartoon. As a commentary on the animation industry, well, it certainly has many truths. Truths of its day and to this day. Overworked, underpaid staff working crunch hours, out-of-touch capitalist producers finding loopholes like manipulative season orders to get out of paying higher wages, shows getting canceled well before their time and then erased off streaming platforms for tax purposes. It's a rough time to be working in animation, and from that angle, Stimpy's cartoon show feels more relevant than ever. Like a frustrated child screaming into a pillow. However, as a meta-commentary on its own production, as it was originally pitched, and many people still frame it as, it's just not very true. The Ren and Stimpy show is one of those rare examples where most of their troubles were their own fault. It's the fault of the studio, the fault of Spumco and John K., not the producers. There's a scene where Ren looks over a bunch of Stimpy storyboards, huffs and trashes most of them, forcing Stimpy to start over. That wasn't Nickelodeon's behavior. They had notes and rejected concepts from time to time, sure, but this start over from scratch dictatorship, that was all John K., who would make his team do 50 different drawings of a present because the color wasn't quite to his liking. He had them redo a sequence 5 times because he kept changing his mind on how it should go. He's the one who did this kind of thing, not Vanessa Coffey, not Will McRobb. The character of Wilbur Cobb was originally named Raymond Spum, implied to be the founder of Spumco itself, but this was changed after production moved to games animation. In any case, Nickelodeon never had a Wilbur Cobb. It didn't have an old professional from another era running things. The channel was barely 15 years old, Nicktoons were still brand new, everybody at Nickelodeon were as young and boundary-pushing and experimental as John K. himself. Nickelodeon never had any industry veterans behind the scenes except arguably Cy Schneider, who left Nickelodeon in 1984 and had nothing to do with Nicktoons era Nickelodeon. There's just no analog to this Wilbur Cobb character. Was this originally supposed to be a younger character, more in line with Vanessa Coffey? John K. has claimed the cartoon follows his initial outline, but he's also said that the production team behind it simply didn't have his experiences with the animation industry and couldn't live up to the heart of the piece.
It was directed by somebody else who didn't have exactly the same experience that I did. Some of the experience, but it was my passion in the writing and story and somebody trying to figure out how to do it.
It's hard to suss out just what John K.'s original intent was and what was changed in production. In any case, Stimpy's cartoon show doesn't quite work if you're approaching it as a meta-commentary on the show's own production, only as a more generalized ribbing of the whole industry. Stimpy's cartoon show has had a bit of a turbulent time over the years. After its initial broadcasting on SNCC, subsequent re-airings edited out a handful of gags along with John K.'s credit. That's not too unusual by itself, but it's the re-edited version that's found on the Ren and Stimpy Show DVD release. The only way to see the original broadcast is to find the original SNCC recording, which thankfully has been preserved. It's nothing significant or objectionable. A few minor shots of Ren on the phone, the two of them editing the film. It all feels like cut-for-time edits, so it's strange that the full version has never re-emerged. But then again, Stimpy's cartoon show isn't available on Paramount Plus at all, along with a dozen other episodes, mostly due to music licensing. Ren and Stimpy used a lot of Raymond Scott music, which is now all owned by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers doesn't let people play with their toys nearly as much as they used to. The era of Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon has passed. Like a lot of this program, I find Stimpy's cartoon show interesting, with a few genuinely good gags and some interesting industry commentary. But I find it ultimately unfocused and toothless in its specific satire, or at least the satire people seem to think it is. Something for animation insiders to do the Leonardo DiCaprio point at, but as a clueless child, all I was thinking was, weird, silly, gross, okay. A cartoon about a troubled production, a little bit disoriented from its troubled production. There's plenty more stories like this in the show's history, but that's for a larger video. This was just a sample.